A $2 billion dinner on the 58th floor of a Chicago skyscraper. The 78-year-old chairman had just lifted a forkful of salad to his mouth when a young waitress burst in shouting a warning. Security dragged her out immediately. But 3 minutes later the chairman suddenly collapsed, his face turning purple as he struggled for air. The entire room froze in panic. What will happen to the billionaire now, and can that woman save him? Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Solaris Tower hummed their familiar tune as Lila Marquez pushed her cleaning cart through the 43rd floor corridor. At 32 years old, she had spent 8 years navigating these marble hallways, invisible to the executives who rushed past her without a second glance. Chicago's skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a reminder of the world that existed beyond these walls. But Lila rarely looked up anymore. Her eyes stayed focused on the tasks at hand, mopping floors, emptying trash bins, wiping down conference tables where billion-dollar deals were made by people who would never know her name. She paused at her supply closet, the one marked at 221, and pulled out her keys. The metal door creaked open, revealing her small sanctuary. On the inside of the door she had taped a photograph of her son Evan at 14, his smile bright despite the medical alert bracelet visible on his wrist. Next to the photo hung an EpiPen in a clear case, her personal one, kept here because she understood better than most what it meant to be prepared. Lila's fingers brushed against the small leather notebook she kept on the top shelf. She pulled it down and flipped through the pages filled with her neat handwriting. Safety violations. Dates, locations, details that most people would overlook. Fire extinguisher on floor 41 expired by 2 months, reported to maintenance on October 3rd. Still not replaced. Emergency exit light on floor 39 flickering, reported October 10th. Kitchen staff not wearing hairnets during food preparation, observed October 15th. Nobody asked her to keep this log, nobody cared what a cleaning lady noticed, but Lila noticed everything. It was a habit she could not break, a remnant from another life. 8 years ago she had been someone else entirely. Lila Marquez, immunology allergy technician at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. 4 years of specialized training. 4 years of understanding how the human immune system could turn against itself in seconds. 4 years of learning that a single peanut, a trace of shellfish, could end a life faster than a bullet. Then Miguel happened. Or rather, Miguel's death happened. Her husband had been healthy, strong, full of life. They had gone out for their anniversary dinner, their favorite Thai restaurant on Devon Avenue. Miguel had always been careful about his shellfish allergy, he had told the waiter, he had asked twice. But somewhere in that kitchen, a wok that had been used for shrimp was not properly cleaned before they stir-fried his vegetables. Lila watched him die in the ambulance, watched his throat close, his face turn blue, his heart stop. The EpiPen they carried was expired by 3 months, a detail she had forgotten to check, a responsibility she had neglected. The guilt never left her. After Miguel's funeral she could not return to the hospital. Could not face another patient, another family, knowing that her own negligence had killed the man she loved. She took the first job she could find, cleaning toilets at Solaris Tower, scrubbing floors, becoming invisible. It was easier this way. Invisible people could not hurt anyone. Evan had been 6 when his father died. Now at 14 he carried his own EpiPen everywhere, his severe tree nut allergy a constant shadow. Lila checked his medication weekly. She would never make that mistake again. Marquez, the voice startled her. She turned to find Cole Washington standing in the hallway, his security uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. At 34, Cole was one of the few people in this building who actually acknowledged her existence, though not always kindly. "Mr. Washington," she said, closing her notebook. "It's after 8, you're supposed to be done with this floor by now. I'm running behind." Conference room B had a lot of cleanup. Cole's eyes narrowed. He was a man of rules, of protocols, of strict adherence to the way things were supposed to be. In his world, janitors did not linger. They came, they cleaned, they disappeared. "Make sure you're out by 8:30. The night security sweep starts then." "Yes, sir." He walked away without another word. Lila watched him go, understanding his coldness. In Cole's mind there was a hierarchy. Security guards protected the building from threats. Cleaning staff were barely a step above the furniture. The idea that someone in her position might have something valuable to contribute would never occur to him. She returned her notebook to its shelf and grabbed her supplies. The executive kitchen on this floor needed attention. The coffee machines, the refrigerator, the microwave. Simple tasks that required no thought, but when Lila entered the kitchen, she paused. Her trained eyes swept across the space automatically, cataloging details that most people would miss. A cutting board, red, indicating it was designated for raw proteins, sat on the counter with vegetable scraps still clinging to its surface. Someone had used it for the wrong purpose. Cross-contamination waiting to happen. A package of deli meat sat on the counter, no longer refrigerated. The temperature in the room was at least 68 degrees. Bacterial growth would begin within 2 hours. A small puddle of water near the sink, a slip hazard. Lila pulled out her notebook and added these observations to her running list. Then she cleaned everything properly, disposed of the unsafe food, wiped down every surface with sanitizer. Nobody would know, nobody would thank her. But somewhere in this building, someone might not get sick because of what she had done. That was enough. As she pushed her cart toward the elevator, Lila passed the main conference room where she could see through the glass walls. A late meeting was still in progress, men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, discussing numbers on a screen that probably represented more money than she would see in 10 lifetimes. One of them glanced up and their eyes met for the briefest moment. The man looked through her as if she were made of glass, then returned to his conversation. Invisible. Lila pressed the elevator button and waited. Tomorrow would be another day of cleaning, observing, and documenting things that nobody cared about. She did not know that in less than 24 hours everything would change. At home that night, Lila found Evan at the kitchen table, homework spread before him. At 14, he had his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. The medical alert bracelet on his wrist caught the light as he wrote. "How was school?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door. "Fine, we have a field trip next week to the Science Museum. I need you to sign the permission slip." Lila took the paper he handed her, scanning the emergency contact information, the allergy notification section that she had filled out so many times. Tree nuts. Severe. EpiPen required at all times. "Did you check your EpiPen today?" Evan rolled his eyes, a gesture so perfectly teenage that Lila had to suppress a smile. "Yes, Mom. Not expired. In my backpack. Like always. I know you think I worry too much, you do worry too much. But I get it." His expression softened. "I remember Dad, you know, sort of. I remember him teaching me to ride a bike. I remember his laugh." Lila's throat tightened. "He loved you so much." "I know." Evan returned to his homework. "That's why I always check my EpiPen. For him. And for you." Later, after Evan had gone to bed, Lila sat alone in the quiet apartment. The walls were thin, and she could hear the neighbors' television, the distant sirens of the city, the endless pulse of Chicago going about its business. She pulled out her notebook and added the day's observations. 3 new violations. 2 follow-up notes on previous reports. 1 moment of concern in the executive kitchen. The notebook was almost full. She would need to start a new one soon. Her 9th since taking the janitorial job. 9 notebooks. 8 years. Thousands of observations that no one had ever asked to see. Sometimes she wondered if she was crazy. If this compulsion to document, to observe, to prepare for disasters that might never come, was just another form of the guilt she could not escape. But then she would remember Miguel's face in those final moments. The terror in his eyes. The helplessness, and she would pick up her pen and keep writing. Because somewhere out there, someone else was eating dinner at a restaurant, trusting that the kitchen staff had cleaned their equipment properly. Someone else was walking past a fire extinguisher without checking if it was expired. Someone else was assuming that everything was fine, that the systems in place would protect them. Lila knew better. She knew that safety was not a guarantee. It was a choice, made 1,000 times a day by 1,000 different people, any one of whom could make a mistake that would cost someone their life. And so she watched, she documented, she prepared. It was all she could do. The next morning, Solaris Tower buzzed with unusual energy. Lila noticed it the moment she stepped off the L train and walked through the revolving doors. Security guards stood at attention. Cleaning crews worked double time on the lobby floors. Fresh flowers appeared in vases that were usually empty. Something big was happening. All hands meeting in 15 minutes, her supervisor announced when she reached the janitorial department. Management wants everyone to understand the protocols for tonight. Tonight. The word carried weight. In the cramped break room, Lila learned that Hector Duval himself would be hosting a private dinner on the 58th floor. Hector Duval, the 78-year-old chairman of Solaris Industries, a man whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small countries. He was finalizing a merger worth $2.4 billion, and the signing would take place over dinner with executives from a Japanese conglomerate. This is the most important event in company history, the supervisor stressed. Every detail must be perfect. No mistakes, no excuses. Lila listened quietly, her mind already cataloging the potential risks. Large gatherings meant more opportunities for accidents. High-pressure situations meant staff would be rushing, cutting corners, making errors. She was assigned to the VIP floor for the evening, not for regular cleaning, but for quick touch-ups between courses. A rare privilege that she suspected was actually a punishment, a way to keep the most experienced cleaner on hand in case of spills. By 6 o'clock, the 58th floor had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables draped in white linen. Silver cutlery gleamed under soft lighting. The private dining room could seat 20, but tonight only 12 chairs had been arranged around a single long table. Lila positioned herself near the service entrance, her cart stocked with cleaning supplies and extra napkins. From here she could observe without being observed. The guests began arriving at 7. She recognized Hector Duval immediately. Tall despite his age, silver-haired, with the bearing of a man who had commanded boardrooms for 5 decades. He moved slowly but with purpose, greeting each guest personally. Behind him walked a young woman Lila had not seen before. 28 perhaps, with sharp features and intelligent eyes that seemed to assess everything they touched. She wore a tailored black dress and carried a tablet, her fingers constantly moving across its surface. "That's Amara Green," whispered one of the servers passing by. "Mr. Duval's new personal assistant. Started 3 weeks ago. Nobody knows anything about her." Lila watched Amara carefully. There was something about the way she moved, calculated, precise, always positioning herself within earshot of conversations but never participating. Her expression remained neutral, almost cold, revealing nothing. The dinner proceeded smoothly at first. Wine was poured. Appetizers were served. Laughter echoed through the dining room as the Japanese executives responded warmly to Hector's charm. Lila performed her duties invisibly, slipping in to remove a dropped napkin, wiping a small splash of wine from the floor, replacing a water glass that had been knocked over. Each time she moved like a ghost, noticed by no one. But she noticed everything. She noticed how Amara's eyes followed Hector's every movement with an intensity that seemed beyond professional duty. She noticed how the kitchen staff rushed between courses, their movements becoming sloppier as the pressure mounted. She noticed how one of the servers nearly collided with another, both carrying trays of hot food. And she noticed during a brief moment when she passed near Hector's chair that the old man's breathing seemed slightly labored. His hand trembled almost imperceptibly as he raised his wine glass. The main course arrived, a carefully curated menu that had been planned weeks in advance. Filet mignon for most guests. A special vegetarian option for 2 of the Japanese executives. And for Hector Duval, according to the menu card she glimpsed, a grilled salmon with a side salad. Lila was about to return to her station when she overheard a conversation between 2 kitchen staff members. "Did anyone tell the new assistant about Mr. Duval's allergies? I thought you did." "I thought she already knew." Lila's blood ran cold. Allergies. The word triggered every alarm in her brain. She moved closer to the kitchen entrance, pretending to adjust supplies on her cart. Inside, she could see the controlled chaos of meal preparation. Chef Owen Clark, a 46-year-old man with a reputation for excellence and a temper to match, barked orders at his team. And then she saw it. A red cutting board, the one designated for shellfish, being used to prepare salad ingredients. The same board she had seen misused yesterday in the executive kitchen. In the rush, no one had bothered to grab the correct equipment. A knife that had touched shrimp was now slicing vegetables. Gloves were not being changed between tasks. Cross-contamination was happening right in front of her eyes. But Lila did not know that Hector Duval was allergic to shellfish. She had not been told. The dietary requirements had not been shared with the cleaning staff because why would they be? She was just a janitor. She made a note in her mental catalog, another safety violation to add to her notebook later. Another failure she would document and report, and watch be ignored. Then she returned to her position near the service entrance, unaware that the salad now being plated for Hector Duval contained invisible traces of death. The servers moved efficiently, placing dishes before each guest. Hector smiled at his plate, complimented the presentation, and reached for his fork. Amara Green stood near the wall, her tablet lowered, her eyes fixed on the chairman with an expression that might have been anticipation. And Lila Marquez, the invisible woman, with 8 years of cleaning experience and 4 years of medical training, watched from the shadows without understanding what she was about to witness. The salad sat before Hector Duval like a work of art, fresh greens, heirloom tomatoes, shaved parmesan, a light vinaigrette glistening under the chandelier's glow. He had not yet touched it, engaged in animated conversation with the lead Japanese negotiator about golf courses in Scotland. Lila returned from a quick trip to retrieve more cloth napkins from the supply room. As she passed by the kitchen entrance, she heard raised voices. "I told you the red board is for shellfish only." Chef Owen Clark's voice cut through the kitchen noise. "I'm sorry, chef. We were behind, and I just grabbed what was available. Clean it up. Make sure nothing cross-contaminated got out there." But the salads had already been served. Lila felt a flutter of unease. She paused, pretending to organize her cart, listening. Did the shellfish touch anything going to Mr. Duval's table? I don't think so. Maybe the salad prep station. But I wiped it down. You wiped it down? With what? A dirty rag? God, these people. Lila's unease grew sharper. She had worked in healthcare long enough to know that wiping down was not the same as proper sanitation. Cross-contamination could occur from the smallest residue, invisible to the naked eye, but deadly to someone with a severe allergy. But she still did not know about Hector's allergy. That information had not been shared with her. She pushed her cart forward, intending to return to her station by the service entrance. But her path took her past the private dining room, where a low partition separated the service corridor from the main space. That was when she heard it. Hector Duval was speaking to one of his executives, his voice low but clear in a momentary lull of conversation. "Make sure the kitchen staff understand, no shellfish anywhere near my food. Even a trace could trigger a reaction. I carry an EpiPen everywhere, but I'd rather not use it in front of our guests." Lila stopped walking, her heart seemed to freeze in her chest. Shellfish allergy, severe enough to require an EpiPen. And she had just witnessed the kitchen using shellfish-contaminated equipment to prepare food that was now sitting in front of him. 8 years of suppressed medical training surged to the surface. Her mind raced through the facts. Shellfish proteins were resilient, not easily destroyed by simple wiping. Cross-contamination could transfer enough allergen to trigger anaphylaxis in highly sensitive individuals. Symptoms could begin within minutes of ingestion. She looked through the glass partition. Hector had picked up his fork. He was gesturing with it as he spoke, the salad still untouched. "Move, now." Lila abandoned her cart and rushed toward the kitchen. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She burst through the swinging doors, startling several staff members. "The salad that went to Mr. Duval, it may be contaminated with shellfish." Chef Owen Clark turned to face her, his expression moving from surprise to annoyance to outright contempt. "Excuse me, who are you?" "I'm Lila Marquez, cleaning staff. I saw the red cutting board being used for vegetable prep. Mr. Duval has a shellfish allergy. If that salad was prepared with the utmost care." Clark interrupted, his voice cold. "I don't need a janitor telling me how to run my kitchen. But you saw nothing. You're not qualified to assess food safety. Now get out of my kitchen before I have security remove you. Lila stood her ground. At least let me warn the service staff. They can replace the plate before he eats it. Clark stepped closer, towering over her. Listen carefully, this dinner is worth $2.4 billion. I will not have some cleaning lady causing a scene because she thinks she knows better than trained culinary professionals. The food is safe. End of discussion. Behind him, the kitchen staff watched in uncomfortable silence. No one spoke in her defense. Lila felt the familiar weight of invisibility pressing down on her. She was nothing here, her words meant nothing, her knowledge meant nothing, but Miguel's face flashed in her memory. His eyes bulging, his throat swelling shut, his last breath. She would not watch another person die. Without another word, Lila turned and left the kitchen. She did not return to her cart. Instead she moved quickly toward the dining room, hoping to catch a server, hoping to find some way to warn someone. But when she reached the service entrance and looked through the partition, her blood turned to ice. Hector Duval had taken a bite of his salad. He was chewing, nodding at something the Japanese executive had said, reaching for his wineglass to wash it down. No, 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 no. Lila pushed through the service entrance, abandoning all protocol. A server tried to stop her, but she dodged past him. She had to reach Hector. She had to warn him. Maybe it was not too late. Maybe the contamination had been minimal. Maybe Amara Green stepped into her path. What do you think you're doing? The assistant's voice was sharp, her eyes cold. Mr. Duval, his food might be contaminated. He has a shellfish allergy. I'm well aware of Mr. Duval's medical requirements. Amara's expression did not change. The menu was carefully planned. Everything is fine, but I saw the kitchen. You saw nothing. Amara's hand gripped Lila's arm with surprising strength. You're a cleaning lady, you don't know anything about food preparation or allergies. Now return to your station before you embarrass yourself further. Lila tried to pull away. Please just let me talk to him. Security. Cole Washington appeared within seconds, his face stern. What's going on here? This woman is disrupting the dinner. Amara's voice dripped with disdain. Remove her. Cole's hand closed around Lila's other arm. Ma'am, you need to come with me. Cole, please listen. Mr. Duval might be in danger. That's enough. His grip tightened as he began to guide her away from the dining room. Lila looked over her shoulder one last time. Through the partition, she could see Hector Duval taking another bite of his salad, oblivious to the poison hiding within the innocent leaves. And she could do nothing to stop it. 3 minutes. That was how long Lila had been standing in the service corridor. Cole's hand still firm on her arm, when she heard the first cough. It was soft, barely audible over the hum of conversation and the clink of silverware. But Lila's ears, trained by years of medical experience and sharpened by the tragedy of her husband's death, picked it up instantly. She turned toward the glass partition. Hector Duval had set down his fork. His hand moved to his throat. He coughed again, louder this time. Something's wrong, Lila whispered. Don't start again. Cole began. Look at him. Through the glass, they watched as Hector's face began to change. A red flush crept up from his collar, spreading across his cheeks and forehead. He loosened his tie with trembling fingers. His breathing became audible, short, labored gasps that cut through the room's ambient noise. The Japanese executives noticed first. Conversation died as all eyes turned to the chairman. Mr. Duval, one of them asked. Are you all right? Hector tried to speak, but only a wheeze emerged. His hand knocked over his wineglass as he pushed back from the table. Red liquid spread across the white linen like blood. He's going into anaphylaxis, Lila said, her voice suddenly calm with clinical certainty. Let me go, now. Cole's grip loosened in shock. Lila pulled free and pushed through the service entrance. The dining room had descended into chaos. Guests stood from their seats, unsure what to do. Someone was shouting for a doctor. Amara Green stood frozen against the wall, her tablet clutched to her chest, her face an unreadable mask. Lila ran to Hector's side. The old man had slumped in his chair, his lips swelling, his skin mottled with hives. The characteristic wheeze of a closing airway filled the space between his desperate gasps. "Mr. Duval, can you hear me? I'm going to help you." She turned to the nearest server. "Call 911. Tell them anaphylaxis, probable shellfish exposure. Patient is conscious but airway is compromising." She looked around the room. "Does anyone have an EpiPen?" Blank stares, shaking heads. "His EpiPen," Lila demanded, looking at Amara. "Where is it?" Amara blinked as if waking from a trance. His suite. Floor 58. "I didn't think. Someone needs to get it now." But floor 58 was 18 stories up. The elevator would take at least 2 minutes. By then Hector's airway could be completely closed. Lila's mind raced. She had an EpiPen. Her personal one, kept in supply closet at 221 for emergencies. Floor 40, 18 stories down. Just as far, but she knew exactly where it was. "I have epinephrine," she said. Floor 40, my supply closet. Cole appeared at her shoulder, his earlier hostility replaced by urgency. "That's too far." "The stairs. We can make it in 90 seconds if we run." Hector made a terrible sound. A high-pitched stridor that indicated his airway was nearly shut. His lips were turning blue. "I'm going," Lila said. "Keep him upright. If he stops breathing, start CPR." She did not wait for a response. She ran. The stairwell door slammed open under her hands. 18 floors. 360 steps. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she did not slow down. Behind her she heard footsteps. Cole had followed. "Other stairwell access," he shouted. "I'll clear the way." They split at floor 50. Cole veered toward the security station while Lila continued her descent. Floor 49, 48, 47. Every second felt like an eternity. Every step echoed with the memory of Miguel's face turning blue in the ambulance. Of his eyes going still. Of the moment she realized the EpiPen in her purse had expired 3 months ago. Never again. Floor 42, 41, 40. She burst through the stairwell door and sprinted down the corridor. Her keys were already in her hand. The closet door, a 221, seemed miles away. A security guard stepped into her path. "Hey, you can't." Cole's voice crackled over the guard's radio. "Let her through. Medical emergency." The guard stepped aside. Lila reached the closet, fumbled with the lock, threw open the door. The EpiPen sat exactly where she had kept it for 8 years, in its clear case, next to the photo of Evan. She grabbed it and ran. The return journey was harder. Her legs had already spent their strength. Her lungs burned with every breath, but she kept moving, one step at a time, climbing back toward floor 58. Cole met her at floor 52, having cleared the route. Elevators holding on 58. "Come on." They made it to the private dining room in 117 seconds. The scene inside had deteriorated. Hector was on the floor, surrounded by panicked guests. One of the Japanese executives was attempting chest compressions. Hector's face was gray, his chest barely moving. "Move." Lila dropped to her knees beside him. "Everyone back." She uncapped the EpiPen with practiced hands. Her training came flooding back. The exact spot on the outer thigh, the angle of injection, the timing. She pulled up Hector's pant leg, pressed the orange tip against his skin and drove the needle home. Click, hold, count to 10. The epinephrine surged into his system. Nothing happened. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Still nothing. "Come on," Lila whispered. "Come on." Then Hector gasped. A deep, shuddering intake of breath that filled his lungs with precious oxygen. His color began to shift, the blue tint fading from his lips. His eyes fluttered open. "What?" he wheezed. "Don't try to talk." Lila kept her hand on his wrist, monitoring his pulse. "Paramedics are on their way. You're going to be okay." The elevator doors opened and EMTs rushed in with their equipment. Lila stepped back, giving them room to work. Her job done. She became aware of the silence in the room. Every eye was fixed on her. The cleaning lady who had just saved the chairman's life. Cole stood near the doorway, his expression unreadable but his earlier hostility completely gone. Amara Green remained pressed against the wall, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly, and somewhere in the kitchen Chef Owen Clark watched through the serving window, his arrogance replaced by the dawning realization of how badly he had failed. The EMTs loaded Hector onto a stretcher. As they wheeled him toward the elevator, the old man's hand reached out and caught Lila's arm. "Your name," he rasped. "What's your name?" "Lila Marquez, sir. I'm just a cleaner." His grip tightened. "No. You're not." Then the elevator doors closed, taking him away, and Lila was left standing in the ruined dining room surrounded by the wreckage of a $2.4 billion dinner. She had saved his life with her son's EpiPen. She had no idea what would happen next. Cole found her standing by the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline without seeing it. The paramedics had gone. The guests had been escorted to a separate room for statements. The ruined dinner table stood untouched, crystal and silver gleaming beneath the chandeliers like a monument to disaster. "You okay?" Cole asked quietly. "I used Evans' EpiPen." Lila's voice was hollow. "I need to get him a new one before school tomorrow. They're expensive. Insurance only covers one per year." It was such a small practical concern in the aftermath of near tragedy. But it was real. It was something she could understand, something she could control. "I'll take care of it," Cole said. "Company medical supplies. I can have a replacement for you within the hour." Lila turned to look at him. "Why are you being nice to me? An hour ago you were dragging me away from the dining room." Cole's jaw tightened. "An hour ago I was following orders, following protocol, following the assumption that a cleaning lady couldn't possibly know more about a medical emergency than the people in charge." He met her eyes. "I was wrong. You saw what no one else was willing to see. You acted when everyone else hesitated. I couldn't let him die, not like Miguel." The name slipped out before she could stop it. Cole's eyebrows rose slightly, but he did not ask. He simply nodded, as if understanding that some stories were not ready to be told. "The police will want a statement," he said instead. "And HR will probably have questions. But for what it's worth, I'll back you up. I saw what happened in that kitchen. I saw how they dismissed you." "Thank you." Lila meant it. In a building full of people who had spent years ignoring her existence, one ally was more than she had ever expected. She looked around the dining room one last time, taking in the abandoned plates, the scattered napkins, the overturned wine glass that had stained the white linen red. Somewhere in this room, the contaminated salad sat partially eaten, evidence of either criminal negligence or something far more deliberate. Lila did not know which possibility frightened her more. The next 72 hours were the longest of Lila's life. By midnight on the night of the incident, she had given her statement 3 times, once to building security, once to the Chicago Police Department, and once to the corporate investigators sent by Solaris's legal team. Each time she told the same story. Each time she was met with the same combination of skepticism and suspicion. "Let me understand this correctly," the HR director said during her 3rd interview. "You're claiming you diagnosed Mr. Duval's condition from across the room, ran 18 floors to retrieve medication, and administered it, all without any authorization or current medical credentials." "I have training. 4 years as an immunology allergy technician, 8 years ago." The director's tone was clipped. "Your current position is janitorial services. You had no authority to administer medication to anyone, let alone the chairman of this company. He was dying. That's not for you to determine." The suspension letter arrived the following afternoon. Lila stood in the HR office, reading the formal language that reduced her act of heroism to a list of violations: unauthorized presence in restricted areas, interference with company event, administration of controlled substance without certification, potential exposure to liability. "You're suspending me for saving someone's life," Lila said quietly. "We're suspending you pending investigation." The director's expression remained impassive. "You'll receive 50% pay during this period. Please surrender your access badge and keys." Lila handed over her badge, the small plastic card that had been her identity for 8 years. She left the building through the service entrance, the same door she had used twice daily for nearly a decade. The next day the rumors began. She learned about them through texts from Rosa, her only friend on the cleaning staff. Apparently a different story was circulating through Solaris Tower. In this version, Lila had somehow engineered the entire incident. Perhaps she had even caused the contamination herself, creating a crisis she could heroically resolve. "That's insane," Lila said over the phone. "Why would I do that? People are saying you wanted attention, that you were trying to get promoted or something." The absurdity of it left Lila speechless. 8 years of invisibility, and now she was being accused of seeking attention. The worst part was that some people seemed to believe it. Amara Green had given a statement, suggesting that Lila had been unusually focused on Mr. Duval throughout the evening. Chef Owen Clark had accused her of causing unnecessary panic by spreading false information about his kitchen practices. Even some of the servers remembered Lila acting strangely before the incident. The narrative was shifting, the story was being rewritten. On the third day, Lila received a call from an unknown number. "Miss Marquez, please hold for Mr. Duval." Her heart stopped. Then a voice she recognized, stronger than it had been on the stretcher, but still carrying the rasp of recent trauma. "Miss Marquez, I understand you've been suspended." "Yes, sir. They're investigating. I know what they're investigating. I've read the reports. I've also read your personnel file, and your previous employment history. Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Immunology Allergy Department, resigned after personal tragedy. Am I correct?" Lila closed her eyes. "Yes. I'm sorry for your loss." The words were simple but genuine. "I also understand you kept a notebook. Safety violations, documented for years. Is that true?" "Yes, sir. I know nobody asked me to. I'd like to see it, all of it, and I'd like to see you. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, at Northwestern Memorial. I'm being released, and I have some things to say that shouldn't be said over the phone." The line went dead. Lila sat in her small apartment, staring at the phone in her hand. Evan was at school. The television was off. The only sound was the distant rumble of the L train passing outside. For the first time in 8 years, someone important had asked to see her. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every moment of that terrible dinner. The red cutting board, the cross-contamination, Amara's cold eyes, Cole's grip on her arm, and something else, something that nagged at the edge of her consciousness. Amara had known about Hector's allergy. She had said so herself. "I'm well aware of Mr. Duval's medical requirements." Then why had the EpiPen been left in his suite on the 58th floor? As a personal assistant, Amara should have had it with her at all times. That was standard protocol for anyone managing a person with severe allergies. And the kitchen, how had such basic safety protocols been ignored? Solaris Tower had hosted countless events. Their catering staff was supposed to be world-class. The contamination had been so avoidable, almost as if, no. Lila shook off the thought. She was being paranoid. Accidents happened. People made mistakes. Not everything was a conspiracy. But the doubt lingered, a seed that would not stop growing. The next morning, she took the L train to Northwestern Memorial. The hospital lobby brought back memories she had spent 8 years trying to forget. The smell of antiseptic, the soft beeping of monitors, the faces of worried families waiting for news. She found Hector Duval's room on the 7th floor, guarded by a security detail that made Cole Washington look relaxed by comparison. But her name was on the approved list, and they let her through. Hector sat up in bed, looking older than she remembered but with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Close the door," he said. "We have much to discuss." And for the first time in 8 years, Lila Marquez sat down with someone who wanted to hear what she had to say. Hector listened in silence as she recounted the events of that night. He did not interrupt. He did not dismiss. When she described the cross-contamination in the kitchen, he closed his eyes briefly, processing the information with the analytical mind that had built a billion-dollar empire. "Show me the notebook," he said finally. Lila hesitated. The notebook was her private sanctuary, 8 years of observations that she had never shared with anyone. But she reached into her bag and handed it over. Hector flipped through the pages slowly, his expression growing more serious with each entry. October 3rd. Fire extinguisher on floor 41 expired. Reported to maintenance. October 10th. Still not replaced. He looked up. "You reported this?" Yes, sir, multiple times. And it was never addressed. No, sir. Hector continued reading. September 15th. Emergency exit light on floor 39 flickering. September 20th. Same issue reported. September 28th. Issue persists. His jaw tightened. My building has been failing its employees, and you're the only one who noticed. Other people noticed, sir. They just didn't think it mattered. It matters. Hector set down the notebook. Everything matters. A flickering light, an expired fire extinguisher, a cutting board used for the wrong purpose. His voice hardened. Someone in my organization tried to kill me, and they almost succeeded because of dozens of small failures that should never have been allowed to happen. He leaned forward, his eyes intense, despite his weakened state. Miss Marquez, you're not just observant, you're thorough, you're persistent. You document everything, even when no one listens. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how valuable? Lila did not know how to respond. I built Solaris Industries from nothing, Hector continued. 50 years of work, thousands of employees, billions of dollars in assets. And in all that time, I never found anyone who watched the details the way you do. Not because they couldn't, because they chose not to. It's easier to assume everything is fine. It's easier to trust the systems in place. Sir, I'm just a cleaning lady. No, Hector's voice was firm. You were a cleaning lady who chose to become something more, not for money, not for recognition, simply because you believed it was the right thing to do. He reached for the document on his table, the one offering her a new position. This is not charity, Miss Marquez. This is a strategic decision. I need someone I can trust, someone who will tell me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Someone who watches. Lila looked at the paper in his hand. Her entire life had led to this moment, the medical training, the tragedy of Miguel's death, the 8 years of invisibility, all of it converging into a single choice. What exactly do you want me to do? She asked. Find the truth, find out who tried to kill me and why, and make sure my building is safe, really safe, not just safe on paper. It was a tall order. An impossible order for someone who had spent nearly a decade scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans. But Lila had never been afraid of impossible. You saved my life. Hector Duval's words hung in the sterile hospital air. Lila sat in the visitor's chair, her hands folded in her lap, unsure how to respond. I did what anyone would have done, she said finally. No, Hector's voice was firm despite his weakness. Anyone would have listened when Chef Clark dismissed them. Anyone would have accepted Amara's assurances. Anyone would have trusted the system. He paused, studying her face. You didn't trust the system. You trusted your own eyes, your own knowledge. That's rare. He reached for a folder on his bedside table, her personnel file, she realized. Her entire 8-year history at Solaris Tower, reduced to a few pages of bureaucratic documentation. 4 years as an immunology allergy technician, Hector read. Resigned voluntarily following personal leave. Reason cited, family circumstances. He looked up. What happened? Lila's throat tightened. My husband, Miguel, he died from anaphylaxis, shellfish contamination at a restaurant. I had an EpiPen, but it was expired. I hadn't checked. The words came out flat, rehearsed through years of self-recrimination. I couldn't go back to work after that, couldn't face any of it. Hector was silent for a long moment. So you became a cleaning lady. I needed a job where I couldn't hurt anyone. And instead you spent 8 years documenting safety violations that no one asked you to document. You kept a notebook full of problems that no one wanted to hear about. You tried to warn people about dangers that everyone dismissed. He set down the folder. You never stopped being a medical professional, Miss Marquez. You just convinced yourself that you had. The observation struck something deep inside her. Lila felt tears prick at her eyes, but forced them back. I'm going to tell you something that hasn't been made public yet, Hector continued. The investigation into my incident is already producing disturbing results. The cross-contamination in my kitchen wasn't just negligence. Someone deliberately used shellfish-contaminated equipment on food that was specifically prepared for me. Lila's breath caught. Deliberately. Camera footage shows my assistant Amara Green entering the kitchen 20 minutes before dinner service. She was seen speaking privately with Chef Clark. After their conversation, the red cutting board was moved to the vegetable prep station. Hector's jaw tightened. She also ensured my EpiPen remained in my suite rather than accompanying me to dinner. The implications crashed over Lila like a wave. She tried to kill you. It appears so. The question is why, and whether she acted alone. Silence stretched between them. Lila's mind raced through the events of that night, recontextualizing every detail through this new lens. The merger, she said slowly. $2.4 billion. Someone didn't want it to happen, or someone wanted to be in position to take control after I was gone. Hector's eyes darkened. Is built this company over 50 years. I know there are people who have been waiting for me to die. I just didn't expect them to try to help the process along. He straightened in his bed, a spark of the chairman's authority returning to his bearing. Miss Marquez, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. The HR department suspended you for saving my life. They believe you overstepped your position, that a cleaning lady had no business doing what you did. His voice hardened. I disagree. I believe you were exactly the right person, in exactly the right place, with exactly the right skills. He picked up a different document from his table, something official, bearing the Solaris Industries letterhead. I'm lifting your suspension immediately. More than that, I'm offering you a new position, Interim Safety Compliance Officer, reporting directly to me. Your job will be to review every safety protocol in the building, identify vulnerabilities, and recommend changes. He extended the document toward her. I want your eyes on everything. Your notebook, your observations, your instincts, everything you've been doing for free for 8 years. I want to pay you for it. Lila stared at the paper in his hand. Mr. Duval, I don't have the credentials. You have something better. You have experience. You have attention to detail. You have the courage to speak up when everyone around you is telling you to be quiet. He placed the document in her lap. Take 24 hours to think about it. But know this, whoever tried to kill me is still out there. And they're not going to stop just because their first attempt failed. Lila looked down at the job offer. The salary was 3 times what she made as a cleaner. The responsibilities were vast, overseeing safety compliance for a 60-story building with thousands of employees. It was terrifying. It was exactly what she had been preparing for, without knowing it, for 8 years. I don't need 24 hours, she said quietly. I accept. Hector nodded, something like respect flickering in his aged eyes. Good, then your first task is already waiting. I want you to work with building security to review all access logs, camera footage, and personnel movements from the night of my incident. Someone in my organization tried to murder me. His voice dropped to steel. I want to know who. When Lila left the hospital an hour later, she carried with her a new badge, a new title, and a new mission. She also carried the weight of knowing that somewhere in Solaris Tower, a killer was watching and waiting, and her next 8 years were going to be very different from her last. The announcement came on a Monday morning. Lila stood in the executive conference room on the 58th floor, the same room where she had watched Hector Duval collapse just 2 weeks earlier. The long table had been replaced with rows of chairs, filled with department heads, senior managers, and key personnel from across Solaris Industries. Hector himself stood at the front, looking remarkably recovered for a man who had nearly died. His voice carried the weight of 5 decades of command as he addressed his organization. 2 weeks ago, I suffered a severe allergic reaction during an important company event. I am standing here today because one person had the courage to act when everyone else hesitated. That person is Lila Marquez. A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd. Lila felt dozens of eyes turn toward her, seated near the back of the room. Some gazes held curiosity, others held skepticism, a few held outright hostility. Miss Marquez has been a member of our janitorial staff for 8 years, Hector continued. During that time, she observed safety issues throughout our facility and documented them meticulously, even though no one asked her to do so. Her background includes 4 years of specialized medical training, which she has kept current despite her change in career. When she recognized the signs of anaphylaxis, she acted decisively and saved my life. He paused, letting the words settle. Effective immediately, I am promoting Miss Marquez to the position of Director of Safety and Compliance. She will report directly to me, and will have full authority to review, audit, and revise all safety protocols across our organization. The murmur became a rumble. Lila could hear fragments of whispered conversations, janitor to director, and is he serious, and she's not qualified. But Hector's voice cut through the noise. I have complete confidence in Miss Marquez. I expect every department to cooperate fully with her initiatives. Any interference with her work will be considered interference with my direct orders. His eyes swept the room, challenging anyone to object. Are there questions? Silence. Then let's get back to work. The meeting dispersed, and Lila found herself suddenly surrounded by people she had spent years avoiding eye contact with. Some offered grudging congratulations, others simply stared as they walked past. Then she noticed him. A man in an expensive gray suit stood near the exit, watching her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He was in his mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair and the polished appearance of someone who had spent a lifetime cultivating power. His jaw was tight, his eyes cold, as if sensing her attention. He walked toward her. His movements were unhurried, predatory. Miss Marquez. His voice was smooth, pleasant, carrying no hint of the hostility she sensed beneath the surface. I'm Victor Hale, Executive Vice President. I wanted to personally welcome you to the leadership team. Lila accepted his extended hand. His grip was firm, controlled. Thank you, Mr. Hale. Victor, please. His smile did not reach his eyes. I must say Hector's decision is unprecedented. Promoting a cleaning staff member directly to director level, it's quite the leap. I hope to prove worthy of the opportunity. I'm sure you'll try. Victor's smile widened slightly. But you must understand, this building runs on hierarchy, protocols, chain of command. People who have spent years working their way up may find it difficult to accept direction from someone who was emptying their wastebaskets last week. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I don't plan to direct anyone, Lila said carefully. Just to observe and recommend. Of course, observe and recommend. Victor released her hand. Well, I wish you luck, Miss Marquez. You're going to need it. He walked away, joining a cluster of executives near the door. Lila watched him go, noting how the others deferred to him, how they leaned in when he spoke, how they laughed at whatever he said. A hand touched her elbow. Cole Washington stood beside her, his expression uncharacteristically soft. Don't let him get to you, Cole said quietly. Who is he exactly? Victor Hale. Been at Solaris almost as long as Mr. Duval, runs half the company's operations. Most people think he's next in line for chairman when Hector retires. Cole paused. Some people think he's been waiting for that day a little too eagerly. Lila filed that information away. You're speaking to me differently than before. Yeah, well, Cole's jaw tightened. I was wrong about you. I treated you like you didn't matter because of your job title. That was my mistake. He met her eyes. I've been assigned to support your safety review. Whatever you need, I'm here. Thank you, Cole. She meant it. In this building full of people who resented her promotion, she needed allies. That afternoon, Lila moved into her new office on the 49th floor. It was modest by executive standards, a single room with a window, a desk, and a small meeting table, but it was hers. The first space in this building that belonged to her. She was arranging her belongings when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a blocked number. Hello, breathing on the other end. Then a voice she did not recognize. Hector Duval chose poorly. Watch your back, Miss Marquez. The line went dead. Lila stared at the phone in her hand, her heart racing. Then she opened her notebook, the same one she had kept for 8 years, and wrote down the exact time, and the exact words. Because somewhere in this building, someone was already working against her, and she was going to find out who. 3 weeks into her new position, Lila had made progress. She had reviewed safety protocols for 12 departments, identified 17 violations, and submitted recommendations that were already being implemented. Her notebook had become an official document, scanned and stored in the company's digital archives. For the first time in years, people were listening to what she had to say, but not everyone was happy about it. The resistance was subtle at first: missed meetings, delayed responses to her requests, documents that mysteriously went missing. Then it became more overt. She found her office door locked when she had left it open. Her computer logged her out 3 times in one day. Someone had scratched the word janitor into the paint of her nameplate. Cole reported each incident to security, but the perpetrators were never identified. Lila refused to be intimidated. She worked longer hours, documented everything, and kept pushing forward with her review. Then came the mechanical room. It was a routine inspection. Lila had added it to her schedule after noticing that the building's CO2 suppression system had not been serviced in 18 months. The mechanical room on the 32nd floor housed critical fire suppression equipment, and she wanted to see it for herself. She arrived at 9 in the morning, Cole accompanying her as usual. The room was large and dim, filled with pipes, tanks and control panels that monitored various building systems. "The CO2 system is in the back," Cole said, checking his tablet. "Technician should have been here already to give us a walkthrough." They found him collapsed on the floor. Jason Moore, 31 years old, maintenance technician. He lay face down near a large pressure tank, his body convulsing, his breathing shallow and rapid. "Jason." Lila rushed to his side, her training kicking in automatically. "Cole, call emergency services, and open those doors. We need ventilation." Cole was already moving, his phone pressed to his ear. Lila assessed the scene with clinical precision. The air in the room felt wrong, thick, heavy, with a faint metallic taste. Her eyes scanned the equipment, and found the source immediately. The CO2 tank's pressure release valve was open. A steady stream of colorless gas was hissing into the enclosed space, displacing oxygen, creating an invisible death trap. "Cole, the valve, shut it off." She grabbed Jason under the arms and began dragging him toward the door. He was heavier than he looked, dead weight that seemed to fight against her with every step. The room spun slightly. The CO2 was already affecting her. Cole reached the tank and found the emergency shutoff. The hissing stopped. Fresh air began to flow through the open doors as building ventilation kicked in. Layla pulled Jason into the corridor and laid him on his back, checking his vital signs. Pulse weak but present. Breathing shallow, irregular. Skin gray, oxygen deprived. "He needs oxygen and possible CPR," she told Cole. "Get a medical kit from the security station." While Cole ran for supplies, Layla positioned Jason for rescue breathing. She had performed this procedure countless times in training but never in a real emergency. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled even as her mind raced through possibilities. The valve had been open. CO2 had been venting into an enclosed space. Jason had been alone in the room with no protective equipment. This was not an accident. Cole returned with the medical kit and an oxygen mask. Layla fitted it over Jason's face, adjusting the flow rate while monitoring his breathing. Color slowly returned to his cheeks. By the time paramedics arrived, Jason was conscious though disoriented. They loaded him onto a stretcher and carried him toward the elevator. "Wait," Layla touched Jason's arm before they wheeled him away. "Jason, can you hear me? What happened in there?" His eyes struggled to focus on her face. His lips moved, forming words that came out as barely a whisper. "They made me, paid me." "Who paid you?" "Jason, who?" But his eyes rolled back and the paramedics pushed past her, rushing him toward the waiting ambulance. Layla stood in the corridor, her mind processing what she had heard. Jason had been paid. Someone had set this up. She walked back to the mechanical room, careful to stay near the door where fresh air still flowed. Her eyes examined every detail: the pressure tank, the valve, the control panel. The safety pin that should have locked the valve in place was missing. Not broken, removed. Someone had deliberately opened that valve. Someone had put Jason in that room knowing the CO2 would incapacitate or kill him. And someone had expected that when Layla arrived for her routine inspection she would find a dead body. A dead body that would raise questions about her competence. A failed inspection that would undermine her position. A tragedy that could be blamed on the janitor-turned-director who had no business being in charge of safety. But Leila had arrived early. She had recognized the danger. She had saved Jason's life. Just like before, she pulled out her phone and dialed Hector Duval's private number. "Mr. Duval, we need to talk. Someone just tried to kill one of our employees, and I think they meant for me to take the blame." On the other end of the line, Hector's voice was grim. "Come to my office, now." Leila took one last look at the mechanical room, memorizing every detail. Then she walked toward the elevator, knowing that whatever game was being played, the stakes had just risen dramatically. And somewhere in the building, watching through cameras she could not see, Victor Hale smiled at his computer screen. The first plan had failed. The second plan had failed. But Victor Hale always had a third plan. Jason Moore regained consciousness 12 hours after the incident. Leila was at the hospital when he woke, waiting outside his room while police officers took his initial statement. Through the glass partition she watched his face, the fear, the shame, the desperate look of a man whose secrets were about to destroy him. When the officers emerged, Detective Sarah Chen approached Leila with a notepad in hand. "He's talking," the detective said. "Claims he was approached 2 weeks ago by someone offering to pay off his gambling debts, about $40,000, in exchange for a simple task. Open a valve, wait in the room, pretend to be affected when someone found him." Pretend to be affected, that was the original plan. He was supposed to fake unconsciousness, make it look like a safety failure that you had overlooked. But he didn't know CO2 displacement works fast. By the time he realized he was actually suffocating, he couldn't get out. Leila felt a cold anger settle in her chest. Someone used him as a pawn. They didn't care if he actually died. Apparently not. Detective Chen consulted her notes. He says the payments were made in cash, delivered to a locker at Union Station. He never met anyone face to face. All communication was through encrypted messages on a burner phone. Does he still have the phone? It was destroyed. But he remembers some details about the messages, specific phrasing, timing patterns. "Our tech people are working on it." The detective paused. "Miss Marquez, this is the second attempt on your position in 3 weeks. First the contamination at Mr. Duval's dinner, now this. Someone wants you out of that building. Or someone wants Mr. Duval's faith in me destroyed. Same result, different method." Detective Chen closed her notepad. "We're going to need your full cooperation on this investigation. Access to building records, security footage, personnel files. You'll have it. I'll speak with Mr. Duval today." After the detective left, Leila entered Jason's room. He lay in the hospital bed, IVs trailing from his arms, his face a mask of misery and guilt. "I'm sorry," he said before she could speak. "I didn't know. I thought it was just a prank, you know. Make the new safety lady look bad. I didn't think anyone would get hurt." Leila pulled a chair next to his bed. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." The story emerged in fragments. Jason had a gambling problem. Online poker, sports betting, anything that offered the thrill of risk and the hope of a big payoff. His debts had spiraled to nearly $50,000, with collectors threatening his family. Then out of nowhere someone had offered him a lifeline. The first message said they knew about my debts, said they could make them disappear if I helped with something small. Just open a valve and stay in the room until someone came. Did they tell you who you were targeting? Not at first. But later when I asked for more details they said it was about undermining the new safety director. Said she was causing problems for important people. Jason's voice cracked. "I swear, I thought it was just corporate politics. I didn't know they wanted me to actually get hurt." "They wanted both of us to get hurt," Leila said quietly. "If I had arrived a few minutes later, you would have died. And I would have been blamed for failing to notice a safety issue during my inspection." Jason's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. I'll tell the police everything. I'll testify against whoever did this." "That's a good start." Leila stood. "But I need something more from you. I need you to think about those messages. Any detail, any hint about who sent them. A phrase they used, a time they sent messages, anything that seemed unusual." Jason nodded weakly. There was one thing. In the last message they said something weird. "The view from the top floor isn't as stable as it looks." I didn't understand what it meant. Leila felt her pulse quicken. The top floor, the executive suite, someone with access to the highest levels of Solaris Industries. "Thank you, Jason. That's helpful." She left the hospital with her mind racing. The evidence was circumstantial, but the pattern was clear. Someone with power, someone with access, someone who stood to gain from Hector Duval's death or disgrace, was orchestrating these attacks. Victor Hale's face flashed in her memory, his cold smile, his subtle threat. "You're going to need luck, Miss Marquez." But she could not accuse an executive vice president based on suspicion alone. She needed proof. That night, Leila stayed late in her office, reviewing security footage from the past month. Cole sat with her, helping to fast-forward through hours of mundane corridor recordings. "There," Leila pointed at the screen. "Stop." The timestamp showed the day before Jason's incident. A figure in a maintenance uniform was entering the 32nd floor mechanical room, carrying a toolbox. "That's not Jason," Cole said. "Different build, different walk. Can you enhance the image? Get a better look at his face." Cole worked the controls. The resolution was poor, but as the figure turned, a partial profile became visible. Leila's breath caught. She recognized that profile, the set of the shoulders, the way he moved. It was not Victor Hale himself, but she knew who it was. A maintenance supervisor who had been seen entering Victor's office multiple times over the past month. The connection was there, faint, but real. "We need to tell Mr. Duval," Cole said. "And the police?" "Not yet." Leila's voice was steady though her heart raced. "This isn't enough. It proves tampering, but it doesn't prove who ordered it. We need to catch them in the act. That's dangerous. So is letting a murderer walk free." Leila turned to face him. "Cole, I spent 8 years being invisible, watching problems unfold and being unable to stop them. I'm not going to let that happen again." Cole studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Help me set a trap." And in the dim light of her office, surrounded by screens showing the empty corridors of Solaris Tower, Leila began to plan her counterattack. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Cole leaned back in his chair, studying the partial image of the maintenance supervisor on the screen. "His name is Daniel Pruitt, 23 years with the company, unblemished record, until 6 months ago, when he started making unusual deposits into his bank account. You have access to his financial records. I know people." Cole's expression remained neutral. "Nothing illegal, but let's say I called in some favors from old friends in the bureau." Leila raised an eyebrow, but did not ask for details. Some things were better left unknown. "The deposits match a pattern," Cole continued. "Small amounts, never more than 2,000 at a time, always cash. Started right around the time Victor began pushing harder for Hector to name a successor. Victor is building his army," Leila said quietly. "Buying loyalty with money while Hector is distracted by the merger. It gets worse. Pruitt isn't the only one. I found at least 3 other employees with similar patterns, all in positions that could be useful for sabotage. A network operations technician, a maintenance supervisor in the HVAC department, and one of the night security guards. 4 people, 4 potential weapons that Victor could deploy at any moment." Leila thought about the implications. She had been focusing on the attacks against her and Hector, treating them as isolated incidents. But this was bigger. Victor was not just trying to eliminate obstacles, he was building infrastructure for a takeover. "We need to tell Hector," she said. "Already scheduled. Tomorrow morning 8 o'clock, his private office." Cole paused. "But Leila, there's something else, something I hesitated to mention." "What?" "The night security guard I mentioned. He's been assigned to your building, your apartment building." Cole's voice was heavy. "He's been doing extra shifts on your floor for the past 2 weeks. A chill ran down Leila's spine. Evan, her son, home alone when she worked late. "I've already arranged for additional security," Cole said quickly. "Plain clothes so it won't scare the kid. But you need to be aware, Victor isn't just targeting you at work. He's watching your whole life." Leila closed her eyes, fighting the urge to run home immediately, to wrap her arms around Evan and never let go. "This has to end," she said. "Soon. Before anyone else gets hurt." "Agreed. That's why we need to make our move now. The trap you suggested, it's risky, but it might be our only chance to catch Victor with his hands dirty." "Then let's do it." Leila opened her eyes, resolve hardening in her chest. "Tomorrow night, I'll announce the server room review, and we'll see who comes crawling out of the shadows." She looked at the screen one more time, at the image of Daniel Pruitt walking toward the mechanical room with murder in his toolbox. Victor Hale thought he was untouchable, thought his power and position protected him from consequences. He was about to learn otherwise. The trap was simple in concept, dangerous in execution. Leela announced publicly that she would be conducting a comprehensive review of the executive floor's emergency systems, a review that would require her to access secure server rooms containing decades of company records. She made sure the announcement reached every department, every executive, every corner of the building's gossip network. Then she waited. The bait was irresistible. If Victor Hale was behind the attacks, he would have to act. The server rooms contained evidence that could expose financial irregularities, internal communications, patterns of behavior that might reveal his involvement in the attempts on Hector's life. 3 days after her announcement, Leela received an anonymous message, midnight, server room B. Come alone if you want the truth about what happened to your husband. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her husband, Miguel. Someone knew about Miguel. It had to be a trick. A manipulation designed to lure her into a dangerous situation. But the mention of Miguel, how could anyone know? She showed the message to Cole, who immediately objected. It's obviously a trap. You can't go alone. I know it's a trap, but I need to spring it. Leela's voice was calm despite her racing heart. You'll be nearby. Detective Chen has agreed to have officers positioned around the building. If anything happens, you move in. And if they kill you before we can reach you, then at least we'll know who did it. Cole shook his head, but he did not argue further. He understood that Leela had made her decision. At midnight, Leela entered server room B. The space was large and cold, filled with rows of humming machines that processed the digital lifeblood of Solaris Industries. Emergency lighting cast everything in a pale blue glow. She waited. Footsteps approached from the far end of the room. A figure emerged from the shadows. Amara Green, Miss Marquez. Amara's voice was different now, no longer the professional coolness of a personal assistant, but something harder, more dangerous. I'm glad you came. Where's Victor? Leela kept her voice steady. Victor will join us shortly. But first I wanted to speak with you alone. Amara stepped closer, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. You've caused us a great deal of trouble. The plan was simple. Hector dies at his own dinner. I grieve appropriately as his trusted assistant, and Victor steps into the chairman's role. Everything was in place, until I interfered. Until you interfered. Amara's eyes glittered with cold hatred. A cleaning lady, a nobody. You weren't supposed to matter. You mentioned my husband. Leela forced herself to remain calm. What do you know about Miguel? I know that he died from anaphylaxis 8 years ago. I know that you blamed yourself. I know that your guilt has shaped every decision you've made since then. Amara smiled. I also know that his death wasn't entirely accidental. The words did not register at first, then they hit Leela with the force of a sledgehammer. What are you saying? The restaurant where your husband died, the kitchen contamination wasn't random. Someone paid to ensure that a shellfish-contaminated wok was used for his meal. Someone who was running a small-scale experiment to see how difficult it would be to kill someone with an allergy. Amara's smile widened. Victor wanted to test the method before using it on a more important target. Leela's world tilted. Miguel, her husband, murdered as a test run for an assassination. You're lying. I'm not. Victor has been planning to eliminate Hector Duval for over a decade. Your husband was simply practice. Rage unlike anything Leela had ever felt surged through her veins. Her hands trembled, her vision narrowed to a single point. Amara's smug, cruel face. I'm going to destroy him, Leela said, her voice barely a whisper. I'm going to destroy both of you. You won't have the chance. Footsteps behind her. Leela spun to find Victor Hale emerging from another row of servers, flanked by 2 security guards she did not recognize. Miss Marquez. Victor's voice was smooth, pleasant, as if they were meeting at a cocktail party. Thank you for making this easy. I must admit, I didn't expect you to actually come alone. She didn't. Cole's voice echoed through the room as he stepped out of the shadows, his weapon drawn. Behind him, Detective Chen and 4 police officers emerged from concealed positions throughout the server room. Victor's expression flickered. Surprise, calculation, then a cold smile. A trap within a trap. Clever. Victor Hale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and criminal tampering. Detective Chen moved forward, handcuffs ready. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights, Detective. Victor did not resist as the cuffs closed around his wrists. And I know that nothing said in this room is admissible. I'll be out by morning. Maybe. Leela stepped forward until she was inches from his face. But I have something you don't know about. Jason Moore kept records, encrypted files with details of every payment, every instruction, every communication. He gave them to me before he gave his statement to the police. For the first time, Victor's composure cracked. He also identified the maintenance supervisor you used to tamper with the CO2 system. That man is currently in custody, telling Detective Chen everything he knows. Leela's voice was ice. You thought you were smart, you thought you were protected. But you made a mistake, Victor. What mistake? You underestimated the cleaning lady. Victor Hale was led away in handcuffs, his perfect image shattered. Amara Green followed minutes later, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as she realized the extent of the evidence against her. When the room was finally empty, Leela sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the weight of everything she had learned. Miguel, her husband, murdered as an experiment. The guilt she had carried for 8 years, the belief that her negligence had killed him, shifted into something new. Not absolution exactly, but understanding. Cole sat beside her, saying nothing, simply present. And somewhere in the depths of Solaris Tower, the machines hummed on, oblivious to the human dramas that unfolded in their shadow. 6 months later, Leela stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of Solaris Tower. The room was filled with employees, executives, and journalists, all gathered to witness the announcement that would reshape the company's future. Hector Duval sat in the front row, looking stronger than he had in years, his eyes bright with pride. Victor Hale's trial had concluded 2 weeks earlier. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Financial records showing years of embezzlement, communications detailing his plans to eliminate Hector Duval, testimony from Amara Green, who had turned state's witness in exchange for a reduced sentence. He was convicted on 12 counts and sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. The investigation had also uncovered the truth about Miguel's death. While the direct perpetrator, a corrupt restaurant employee, had died years earlier, the connection to Victor's early experiments was established beyond doubt. It was cold comfort, but it was closure. Today was about the future. 8 years ago, Leela began, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. I walked into this building as a janitor. I spent nearly a decade invisible, cleaning floors, emptying trash, watching from the shadows. I saw problems that no one else noticed. I documented violations that no one else cared about. I was told, in 100 different ways, that my observations did not matter. She paused, looking out at the faces before her. I was wrong to believe them, and they were wrong to dismiss me. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The events of the past year have taught us all an important lesson. Safety is not a department. It is not a checkbox on a compliance form. It is a culture, a way of seeing the world that values every voice, every observation, every concern. Leela straightened her shoulders. Today I am honored to announce the creation of the Solaris Foundation for Workplace Safety, a non-profit organization dedicated to training, educating, and empowering workers at every level to identify and address safety hazards in their environments. Applause filled the room. Leela waited for it to subside before continuing. This foundation will be funded by a $10 million endowment from Solaris Industries, with additional contributions from partner organizations across the country. We will provide free safety training to any business that requests it. We will create resources for workers who feel their concerns are being ignored. We will advocate for stronger protections and clearer regulations. She looked directly at Hector Duval. Mr. Duval, you gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw potential in a cleaning lady that others dismissed. This foundation is my way of paying that forward, of ensuring that the next Leela Marquez, wherever she is, has the tools and support she needs to be heard. Hector rose from his seat, walking slowly to the podium. The room fell silent as the chairman of Solaris Industries, the man who had nearly died and who had emerged stronger, faced his employees. Leela Marquez saved my life, Hector said simply. But more than that, she reminded me of something I had forgotten.
This company was built on the idea that every person matters, every contribution counts. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that truth. He turned to face Leela, extending his hand. Miss Marquez, effective immediately, you are appointed as Chief Safety Officer of Solaris Industries, a permanent position with a seat on our executive board. The cleaning lady has become one of the most important voices in this organization. His eyes twinkled. I expect you to keep us honest. Leela shook his hand, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her shoulders like a mantle. After the ceremony, she found a quiet corner of the ballroom, needing a moment to process everything. Cole appeared beside her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. You did good, Director, he said, offering her a glass. Chief Safety Officer now, apparently. Leela shook her head in disbelief. A year ago I was scrubbing toilets on the 43rd floor. A year ago you were the most observant person in this building. Nothing has changed except other people finally noticed. They clinked glasses. What's next? Cole asked. Leela looked around the ballroom, at the executives mingling with maintenance staff, at the journalists interviewing security guards, at a world where the invisible had finally become visible. Next we do the work, she said. The foundation launches in 3 months. We have training programs to develop, partnerships to build, people to help. She smiled. The janitor's job is never really done, Cole. There's always another floor to clean. Cole laughed. I'll be right there with you. Later that evening, Leela drove home to her small apartment. Evan was waiting for her, 17 now, tall and healthy, his medical alert bracelet still visible on his wrist. I saw the news, he said, hugging her tightly. Mom, you were amazing. I had good teachers. Leela held her son close, thinking of Miguel, of the man he had been, of the tragedy of his death, of the strange path that had led from that loss to this moment. Dad would have been proud, Evan said quietly. Yeah, Leela's voice caught. I think he would.
That night after Evan had gone to bed, Lila sat by her window looking out at the Chicago skyline. Solaris Tower glittered in the distance, a beacon of light against the dark sky. She had started her journey invisible, a cleaning lady who noticed things, a woman carrying guilt for a death she had not caused. Now she was something else. A voice for the voiceless, a guardian of the overlooked, a reminder that the most important observations often come from the people we forget to see. Her phone buzzed. A message from Detective Chen. New case. Factory on the south side. Workers reporting safety concerns being ignored. Thought you might want to take a look. Lila smiled. The mission was just beginning. She typed her reply. Send me the address. I'll be there in the morning. Then she set down her phone and watched the city lights flicker and dance, 1,000 windows holding 1,000 stories, some seen, some hidden, all waiting for someone to pay attention. And Lila Marquez, the woman who had learned to see, would be watching, always watching. The next morning she arrived at the factory on the south side before dawn. It was a meatpacking facility, employing over 500 workers, many of them immigrants with limited English and even more limited knowledge of their rights. Detective Chen met her at the entrance. We've had 3 workplace accidents in the past 2 months, the detective explained. Workers are saying the equipment is faulty, the safety training is insufficient, and management is threatening anyone who complains. Lila looked at the building, gray, industrial, unremarkable. The kind of place most people would drive past without a second glance. How many workers have spoken up? Just one, publicly. Maria Santos, 52 years old, been working here for 15 years. She filed a complaint with OSHA last month. 2 days later she was reassigned to the most dangerous section of the plant. Retaliation. The classic response to whistleblowers. I want to meet her, Lila said. Maria Santos was a small woman with calloused hands and tired eyes that lit up with hope when Lila introduced herself and explained why she was there. You believe me? Maria asked, her voice thick with emotion. Nobody believes me. They say I'm causing trouble. They say I should be grateful for my job. I believe you. Lila took the woman's hands in her own, and I'm going to help you prove it. Over the next week, Lila and her team documented everything. Broken safety guards on machinery, missing emergency stops, inadequate ventilation in areas where chemicals were used, training records that were incomplete or entirely fabricated. The factory was a disaster waiting to happen. But more than that, Lila found a community of workers who had been afraid to speak for far too long. One by one they came forward with their stories. Injuries that had been reported as personal accidents. Illnesses that had been dismissed as unrelated to work conditions. Threats and intimidation from supervisors who valued production over people. The Solaris Foundation provided legal assistance, connected the workers with advocacy groups, and helped them file a comprehensive complaint that could not be ignored. 3 months later, the factory was shut down for major safety violations. The owner was fined nearly $2 million, and Maria Santos, the woman who had dared to speak when everyone told her to stay silent, was offered a position with the foundation as a community liaison. It was just one victory, one factory, one small corner of a world full of unsafe workplaces and voiceless workers, but it was a start. Lila stood on the roof of Solaris Tower on the anniversary of the night she had saved Hector Duvall's life. The Chicago wind whipped at her hair as she looked out at the city below. Cole joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Big day tomorrow," he said. The foundation's first national conference, speakers from 12 different industries, over 1,000 attendees. "A year ago I was cleaning bathrooms on the 43rd floor. A year ago you were the most valuable asset this company had, and nobody knew it." Cole smiled. "Now everybody knows." Lila accepted the coffee and took a long sip. The warmth spread through her, pushing back the autumn chill. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't run for that EpiPen?" Cole asked. "Every day. Hector would have died. Victor would be chairman. Amara would have gotten away with it, and I would still be invisible. Instead you changed everything." "I didn't change anything." Lila shook her head. "I just paid attention. I did what needed to be done. Anyone could have done the same. But they didn't." "You did." She thought about that. About all the moments in her life that had led her here. Miguel's death, the years of guilt, the decision to keep watching even when no one cared. "My husband used to say that the world is changed by people who show up," she said quietly. "Not by heroes, not by geniuses, just by ordinary people who refuse to look away." "He sounds like a wise man." He was. Lila smiled, and for the first time in years the memory of Miguel brought warmth instead of pain. "He would have liked you, Cole. He would have been proud of what we're building." Below them Chicago spread out in all directions, a city of millions, each person carrying their own story, their own struggles, their own quiet acts of courage that no one would ever see. Lila could not save them all, could not watch every kitchen, inspect every factory, protect every worker, but she could teach others to watch. She could build systems that listened. She could create a world where the invisible were finally seen. And that was enough. That was more than enough.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.